The May meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals is now open, and I'm going to call the roll. Henry Rua,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'm here. I'm Patty Kelly, the acting chair, and so we have a quorum for the meeting. I just want to quickly go over that this is not a public hearing for Verizon. This is a meeting for them to give us the information that we requested at the last meeting. Notices went out to the paper and on our website and on Lighthouse TV that this was not going to be a public hearing, that would be postponed until a later date not yet announced. So we are going to start with the material, if you don't mind, Mr. Olson. I just want to start going over what we did receive from you, if that's all right, and then we'll let
Absolutely.
you go do it.
Yeah, if I could just interrupt, just to reiterate that, I will mute as necessary. You can see on the top left whose mics are on and who's hot. So as needed, you might be muted. So just be cognizant of that.
Okay. We had asked Mr. Olson to please send us a survey because we were working with approximate numbers from the site plan. We did receive the survey. Thank you. We had also asked for revised maps from Mr. Crosby, working with our consultant, Ron Grafe, that included roads, streets, and particularly the Mount Marion School and the Mount Marion Firehouse, because those are areas that are concerned to us in terms of coverage. We got maps. We did not get any of those things that included anything with roads or any identifying factors on that. We asked for the results of the balloon test. We did get the balloon test results, but only partially, because inadvertently, the request that we had made for specific roads to be included were left off. Those were important roads. I'm just going to let the rest of the board and anybody else listening what they were. 801 Kings Highway, it's an 1840 brick home. 1032 Kings Highway, the Meyer Homestead. 694 Kings Highway, the Levy Meyer House from 1792. 198 Duzel Road, the Wynn House from 1773. And 347 Old Powder Mill Road off of Churchland Road, the 1730 York House. I had also included on that list the houses of people who live adjacent to or near the proposed site at 807 Kings Highway, 810 Kings Highway, 775 Kings Highway, 793 Kings Highway, 783 Kings Highway, and 600 Glasgow Turnpike, because I think the board would be interested in seeing the proximity to the tower in our discussions. And we also had asked on behalf of our planner for the 5-mile radius, which was included, and we appreciate that. It's problematic that we didn't get everything that we asked for. Obviously, you know that, Mr. Olson. We held off on doing a public hearing specifically so that the board would have an opportunity to review the material, to understand it, to ask questions before we brought the public in, so that we're all working with the same information. I have no understanding whatsoever as to why we didn't get the maps that we asked for. Perhaps, Mr. Crosby, you could just tell us before we begin with the other things.
Actually, if you don't mind, and I apologize to interrupt, I would like to tell you that because it comes from our office. It was not intentional. Mike did the work, and because there were a couple of other prior versions. Bottom line is, we sent out the wrong version inadvertently. Mike has the work here. He did it in a timely manner. It was an office administration issue. He will present it tonight, and you'll have it tomorrow. Again, completely inadvertent. It was just an oversight, and I apologize for that.
Okay. All right. And in terms of the balloon test and those other things, you understand that we can't really do SECRA, as Dan will attest, without having the balloon test results because we need that for secret.
And absolutely,
The
Sorry,
problem
sorry.
is that the leaves will be all out on the trees and it might impact the view shed that we're trying to ascertain. So we have a couple of problems that actually you need to overcome, not we, but it's a problem for us because we had been really moving expeditiously to try and get this review done, as you know. I ordered the balloon test early just for this reason, so that it wasn't going to hold us up. So it's disappointing. I'm not going to speak for the whole board. They can speak for themselves, but to get the material and to not have it meet the needs of what we needed to accomplish tonight is frustrating, to say the least.
And I understand that. And again, unfortunately, it was inadvertent. It was not intentional at all. In fact, Tectonic will be out there this Thursday to shoot those locations that were inadvertently omitted from this.
Right. Okay.
I agree. There are some leaves that are coming out. The good news is some of the harder woods, like I know the maples and the oaks, they are not out, and they typically are not out in leaves until usually late May. This is a little different.
Oh no,
spring.
the maples on my property are leafed.
Okay, well, and I understand what you're saying, and we're just gonna, take the shots and take the pictures and do the best we can and go from there. And I apologize for that, but we're getting that done as quickly as possible. Please understand, I don't want to go into a long explanation. That was resulting from a computer problem where the filter I had, Patty, as you know, we were corresponding, and I included Steve on the correspondence, and then you sent back to me only, and that's not your problem, that's my problem, but me only, the list of sites. I then drafted an email to Steve to say, please look at these sites, and they never got through something with our firewall. I'm not an IT person, I don't understand it. We were doing the work, it was not intentional.
Okay.
At all, and I apologize though, because I can understand that it's frustration.
I'm not making an accusation. I'm just saying we didn't get it. And so that impacts us. It impacts our review and it impacts the public who, we wanted to get them involved as soon as possible. Is there anybody from the board that wants to say anything about this before we move on? No? Okay. I want to talk about the survey, if I may. Let me just get my note to drop. Scott, I noticed on the survey that the back property, the one that you said there were 262 feet on the original site plan,
Yes,
that wasn't listed on the survey, which I thought was odd. The other properties were, but there was nothing to the back property.
and I believe, I don't think Steve is on from Tectonic. I believe the reason for that was just because I think the purpose of the survey was to nail down the specific variances that were required in terms of exactly how many feet were required.
Agreed.
And Steve had determined that really wasn't in question, but I can certainly ask him.
It would be good to know because one of the setbacks, the one that is closest to Kings Highway, I guess we originally were calling it the south, but it's really, I think, the east side because it's the houses on Kings Highway, so it's that setback.
Okay.
Patty, would you like me to share the document?
I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I think if anybody knows, everybody on the board knows which houses we're talking about along Kings Highway. Those are the houses that are being impacted.
Tell me if it's helpful.
What?
You tell me if this is helpful.
I don't see anything.
I'm sorry, this is Brett Begallon with Tarpon Towers. I'm trying to understand the question, Patty. If I look at SB-1 on the zoning drawings, I see setbacks to all of the property lines.
I'm talking about the survey map.
Yeah, Brett, that would be
As the basis of the rest of the drawings.
No, the survey map is a little different. Kevin, that's not helping because it's not showing what we need to see.
Okay.
But it would be the houses. You see the bottom house there? It's too, you can't really see it. There we go. Okay. Along here, along Kings Highway at the bottom, that strip of houses back down there. That setback changed a lot. It was originally on your application, a setback for 100 and, the distance was 165 feet from the tower to the Desch property. On the new one, it's 189 on the survey and on your new setback thing. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, and I think if, I don't have the other plan, I know what you're talking about. The
I mean,
setback
that's
that we're-
good for you, but because it reduces what you're going to need in terms of a variance. But because I saw that 30-foot difference, it made me more curious about what was going on in the back without actually seeing the survey, just to make sure.
Yeah, no,
just
I understand. And let me explain. The 189, and maybe it's an interpretation issue for the ZBA, I don't know. But if you depending on how you measure your setbacks, but if you measure it in a, I guess what I'll say is a perpendicular, well, if you come in a straight line to the southern property line, from the
Right.
tower,
right.
you would meet the setbacks. But so that's, and so, but for some reason, the first plan that you saw last month, Tectonic had extended an imaginary line from, you see where the, in the bottom left, where it creates this L shaped, or, you know, it comes across to the east and then it shoots down.
Yeah.
Okay. They extended an imaginary line to meet where the tower would intersect to create that lesser setback. And when I looked at the plans in more detail, I thought, well, that doesn't seem correct. To be conservative, you should make it angle it to hit the closest, the setback should be the closest to the side, which is how we
Right.
show it now.
Which
If you
is-
did a straight, go ahead.
Right. So this time it's 189 feet, which is correct. Is that what you're saying? That's correct.
I believe I believe so, unless the ZBA were
Okay.
to interpret it that actually you don't need a setback, but
No, we're not.
I didn't think you
What
would.
what I'm saying is on your original application, you had that exact same line as 165 feet, not 189.
Correct.
So I want to determine which one is the one that you are using for the request for setbacks. Is it's 189, then that reduces the setback you're going to require.
It is 189. I think that's the fair interpretation. And again, you know, like I said, we corrected it because when we were looking at it this round, it didn't make sense to extend that imaginary line. I don't know why it was done that way.
Okay. And then I have the same question for the front. On the
Yes.
original one, you had 159 feet. And on this one, on the survey one, it says 179 going to what looks like the end of the property line. And that's 179 feet, which is 20 feet further, which again would require a reduced setback if that's the number you're planning on using. But on your
Yeah.
setback map, you still have 159.
Yeah,
So,
and I apologize. I thought you were done.
no, it just is a little confusing. Which number is correct?
I agree. I have to talk to Steve Matthews about that. I believe, I see the problem. I believe the setback for that should be 159 because on the setback plan, that to me seems to be the closest area on that curve. Again, on the survey, for some reason, the surveyors extended the line a little bit so that
I
if you
see.
if you looked at it, you know, you can tell that 179 is not a straight line to the closest part of the road.
Okay.
I don't know why he did that. I'm going to find out though.
Okay, I just wanted to know what we're dealing with in terms of setbacks. And I think given the fact that we've gone from 165 to 189 in terms of distance from the original request to this one now, where it's showing up as 189 on both your setback map, your newest one, and on the survey, I think for all our sake, it would be good for you to revise your setback request to reflect the new information.
I agree 100%. I was just going to suggest that after this meeting, I will
Okay,
provide that clarification.
the 188 on the other side, the property that would go to the next one, that has remained stable at 188.
That is correct.
So that didn't move at all. So it's the one that is closest to the homes that has increased in terms of how far it is from the tower. And that would then for sure reduce the amount of feet of setback that you're going to need.
Yes.
And then again, just so we can clarify, I want to make sure that we are within that boundary, within that thing with the back property, because the survey doesn't show it. And I think we just need verification from your surveyor, or whatever piece he didn't do of it, just so that we are all working with the exact same information.
I will talk to our surveyor to find out what happened and to get the information.
Okay. Does anybody from the board or any of Dan or anybody, Kim, have any questions before we move on?
Nope.
Okay.
No, but
Um,
I do agree with Patty. It would be helpful just to have that measurement from the rear yard, even if it's not required. It's just helpful just to have everything in on this one sheet. So I
God
agree
forbid
with your.
it's wrong and we haven't factored that in and we have an incorrect number. I just want to make sure we have the right number. That's all.
No, it's just helpful, especially for once the public starts to review it. So anyway, I just want to say I agree with putting that on there. Thank you.
Okay. Now I have another question before we get on to the mapping issues. The partial boundary and topographic, that's on map number 2. Once you get past the survey, you have those other groups of maps that has the site plan and everything in it. Page 2, it's called partial boundary and topographic summary. No, it wasn't there. It wasn't in any of those.
What page is it?
It was in the big pieces, the 11 by 17 pages that you sent us.
You're talking
Scott?
about the survey, correct?
Yeah, it's not the survey. It may still be portion of the survey, but the bottom calls it the partial boundary and topographic summary.
Correct. I think it's labeled SU-101.
Yeah.
Does
And on the
anyone
very
know
top,
what?
on the very top of it, it has a little box that's called location map. Do you
Yes,
see that? Okay.
I do.
And it
Does anybody
shows,
know where it is in the PDF of the
Yeah.
84 page?
Oh, I don't know where it is. I know Kevin just had it. Kevin, that was what you were showing before.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Holly. I don't know exactly what page it is though in the
Well,
PDF.
Okay.
This is the large documents of the survey and then the legend or description.
it's past the original survey.
So I'm
Okay.
sorry, Kevin, go back.
Two.
No, I think you have to go up and then over to your right.
Right
top
there.
right of
the
that map.
partial boundary and topographic survey right here, right? SU
Okay.
101.
Yeah, keep
Yeah.
going up.
Keep going up, Kevin.
There we
You
go.
got it.
Hold it. Right here, right here. And that says 1 inch equals 2,000 feet. So there had been a lot of discussion last time about how far this tower is from where the original tower is. So I took out my little ruler, and that little space between the tower and then that little dot that says Mount Marion, which is actually right where the firehouse is, it's Glasgow Turnpike, would be just about a quarter of inch, maybe a little under a quarter of inch. So that's 500 feet. If you add another 125 feet to go into the lighthouse to where the tower is, that's how many feet this tower is from where the firehouse tower is. So we're not talking a mile, we're not talking a half a mile, we're not even talking a quarter of a mile. We're talking about 600 feet. Just so that we bear that in mind later on when we get to the analysis of the two.
Patty, I think that we should double check that because it comes up at exactly a quarter of a mile. So I know you said it's not a quarter of a mile, but it is a quarter of a mile. So if that's a question, I think that it should be clarified other than trying to use a scale on
Well,
a map.
I'm
that
going
may
by
not
what
be-
I'm going
right,
by
but-
the scale right
right,
here
but
in
keep in
your own
mind-
maps.
But you're not looking at that map on a full-size printout to use that scale at 1 inch.
I'm looking at the map that you gave us, which says 1 inch is is 2,000 feet. So I took your map that you gave us and measured that, and it was just a little under a quarter of an inch, which would be 500 feet.
Okay, my
Now, if
suggestion
I'm
is
not
that,
looking at the right map,
Hang
we
on,
can
Mike.
look at it on another map, but that's what you gave us.
Can
Well,
I make a suggestion? I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Kim.
oh, I was just gonna say that sometimes, so when you have a scale like this, you have to actually be looking at the full scale map. I don't know what was submitted. I just have the electronic. But if you do just measure it like on the PDF or like a printout on like 8.5 by 11, it is.
Oh, Patty has the printout from Verizon, no?
I have the big
Oh.
printout that they gave me. Yeah.
Okay, and
So
okay,
just
okay.
just bear in mind, because there have been different distances that have been kind of thrown around. So I wanted to just say that that's in there, and if it's not useful to us, then I don't know why it's there, but so I just wanted to point that out. And then on the other piece, you have on another piece of the site plan, or one of those, you have scales for different sizes of paper. So we have the 11 by 17 inch paper. And so with that scale that you gave us, which is 1 inch was 60 feet, I believe it was, or something like that. I don't have it open in front of me. But I was trying to kind of get a sense of how far the tower would be from the other houses on Kings Highway using the scale that's on your map there. And is that not a correct thing to do? Can I not rely on the scale of the map that you sent us on those 11 by 17s?
Well, I mean, I'm going to presume that the scale is accurate, but I would, I'd probably,
Okay.
assuming that I'm looking at 1 inch equals 100 for the 11 by 17 and 1 inch equals 50 for the, 2 foot by 3 foot plan.
There was one that says 1 equals 30 and the other one was 1 inch equals 60.
Okay, that's on the set. You're right. That's the different sheets have different
Sizes, right,
scales. Exactly.
right.
If
Okay,
you look at the town zoning map, which has a scale, a linear scale, which I just measured it from the firehouse site to this site, is approximately a quarter of a mile.
okay. So unless the board has something to ask about these things, shall we move on to the maps that Mike is going to present that we haven't seen? Yes, no?
Well, Patty, it sounds like the scale issue hasn't really been resolved. Is there something that you need the applicant or?
No,
something maybe from-
I just wanted to make sure that people don't think that this tower is a mile away from the light, from the tower at the fire department. That it's really it's a couple of hundred feet away,
Okay.
Yeah.
Quarter of a mile, Patty.
a quarter of a mile.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember. I hope I didn't say a mile away. So I don't know where that's coming from, but it's
No,
very
it's
easy.
in discussion, Scott, over the past times we've been hearing it's a mile away or it's under a mile. We want to just get a better sense of that this is not a huge distance between the two towers.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
I understand what you're saying. The distance is very easy we can, like Dan just said, he measured it. You can go to Google Earth. You can use these plans. That we will confirm the exact distance without a problem. But I understand what your point is.
yeah. Okay, so let's go to the maps that we're now going to see.
Kevin, is it all right if I share my screen?
Yeah, one sec, Mike. Let me just make you presenter. You're on.
Kevin, I'm muting myself, okay?
Oh, fine by me.
see if I can get this to, I have 3 screens open here, so I hope it's going to open the right one here.
I think you have the right one.
Did it show up full screen or not? I can't tell.
It's,
What does it show you?
We see that it's on the side. So it's not full.
You see 2 images, or you see
We
one
just see
image
the,
with a
we
bunch
just
of
see the one, but we
thumbnails?
see we see all the slides on the left-hand side.
Yeah, when I
Or
hit
the slide.
slideshow, it switched screens on me here, so I don't know if I can get that
Yeah.
back. Let me try to stop sharing, and I'm going to try to share the screen that it popped up on here. It's just going to be the screen here, I believe. Let's see if this works. Hopefully this is full screen now.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, you know, we had put together a presentation prior to the last meeting, and that presentation was our standard height justification file. And because it was not prepared until shortly before the last meeting, we decided to hold off on sending that in. And then based on the comments from the board as well as Ron from the last meeting, we decided that we would rework that based on your comments about, you know, having topographical map for an underlay, having side-by-side plots to compare, about having roads visible, and about calling out the Mount Marion School and Mount Marion Park residential area. So you're going to see those in these slides, and this is what you were supposed to receive. So I apologize for the confusion that would have arisen out of the you know, receiving the wrong file. But this is an introductory slide here. This isn't intended to convey any particular map information other than what we've done in the past, which is the red is the red color is our base layer, and then what we're comparing is the green, which is the top layer. And we'll get into the specifics of each comparison in the following slides. But for the purpose of doing a delta analysis, we have to use the AWS PCS bands, which are in the 2 gigahertz range, which are the bands that are subject to terrain and foliage, but they're also the highest capacity bands that we need for the proper coverage and capacity in this area. So that's the base, and that was something that Ron had confirmed during the last meeting that we wanted to look at. So this is just an introductory slide. When you do get these slides in front of you, you know, obviously if you take the time to read the text, it does walk you through. I did a summary of each of the following slides so that we would have the text in there to support it. But since I'm going to be walking you through that, I'm not going to read these particular boxes of text other than to say that the summary that we had was that the 146-foot height at the proposed location was the minimum height necessary to provide adequate and reliable service to the previously identified coverage gaps. So that's ultimately where the presentation will lead. So this is the first, and I, you know, if anybody wants me to go back, you know, please say so, but I assume that everybody wants to just jump into the map so that we can try
Mike,
to.
I do. Sorry, this is Holly. That
Sure.
first, can you go back to that first slide for a second?
Sure.
So while you were talking, I was trying to read the text on the right. It says
Okay.
this is data where the alternate location is not capable of providing coverage and capacity relief compared to the proposed or original site. What 2 sites are you comparing?
Well, this is just an example coverage, so this isn't, you know, in
Oh,
this
this
particular,
isn't.
it's just an example, but the base layer, the red, is actually the fire department in this particular slide, but this is just an example slide just to change sections, because when you're looking at this 30-page RF justification, we're changing into this supplemental section where we go into the height justification. So it's just an intro, and this map is
Okay.
just an example map. So
Okay.
you'll see this map though when we're move forward.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Mike,
Thank
could you speak a little closer to the mic? We're having trouble hearing you.
Right, I have it right in front of me too. I know I've been having trouble with my computer lately. I apologize. Can you hear me a little bit better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna try to hold that microphone close. All right, so I'm gonna move ahead here. So the first slide, so, you know, one of the things that was requested was that we provide the topographical underlay. And while that's not part of our standard map availability, we were able to have this built into the tool. And you can see there is a scale on the bottom left here, goes 0 to 0.3 miles. I took that and I made it a big black bar here on the top too. I use that same length just to make it a little bit more visible because this is the standard scale as part of the legend of this program. I also called out the red star here is the Mount Marion Elementary School. The blue box represents the Mount Marion Park residential area. And you can actually see when you look at this map, you can actually see each house is a black dot. And this is what Ron was talking about when he was saying, you know, if we're able to use a 7.5 minute quad map as part of the underlay, you get a much clearer detail of the waterways, the roadways, the terrain, and this is giving you maximum visibility to the area. Additionally, you see the original search ring in red, and you see the original fire department candidate, and you see the 17 industrial driver road candidate as well. So that's the base layer. So there's no coverage on this first image, and that's just so that everybody has the ability to see maximum clarity of what that map looks like. So if there's any question on the following slides, we can always refer back to this map because without the coverage on it, it allows you to see the underlay image much more clearly. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see that this is very similar map to what was in that example slide. And this is,
Mike,
yes,
where on this map before you turn, where's the throughway is that big long purple thing going through, right?
yep, you see the two dark red lines. That's the north-south of I-87. And it says
Okay,
toll road right here.
So the star, that means the tower, the proposed tower,
No, no, no,
that can't be the proposed tower.
no.
That's Mount Marion School, Patty.
Oh, okay, okay,
The tower, the original fire department is the little black symbol here that's
Right.
inside the ring. That's the original fire department candidate.
okay, so then
This
our
location
tower
up
is
here
the other one.
is 17 industrial. That's right there. I don't know if you
Okay.
can see the cursor or not, but I'm circling that right now.
Yes, I did, I see it,
Okay.
okay, thank you,
Yep. So the site is east of 87 and north of 32.
okay,
Okay. So on the right image, you see that there's red and green coverage that we had described. And this is sort of our, control group, if you will. This is the red represents the fire department. The green represents the 146 proposed at 17 industrial. So you can see how very similar these coverage layers are. And so you remember one of the questions that was asked was, why did I mention the 176 mark? Well, the 176 mark was a height that we were looking at if we wanted to fill in every single gap that was originally covered by the fire department. And you say to yourself, well, it's only a quarter of a mile away. Why does that make a difference? Well, what you see when you look from where the sites are located east of 87 and you look west towards the areas where there's variable coverage, you can see that there's terrain both to the north and to the south and throughout this Route 32 stretch. So the fire department is, and I've mentioned this previously, but it's strategically located where it has better line of sight down that road. Whereas as we move north, we start to get clipped and shadowed by some of that terrain. That's why you see that difference, and that's part of the reason why you need a little bit taller tower. Now, the area where Mount Marion Park is located is about 40 feet higher in ground elevation, plus the average tree height in this part of New York State is 80 feet. So you've got about 120 feet difference in elevation here. So when we look at the subsequent slides, you're going to see that difference when we look at the different heights. So the main point here on the right is that there's a few areas where at 146, we still don't achieve what we originally were going to achieve with the fire department, but we're looking at that as is generally similar in coverage. And we felt that 146 center line allowed us to propose a tower that would easily meet the typical 1-to-1 setback requirement. We understand that that's not the requirement that's in play here, but for your consideration, it would at least meet that typical minimum 1-to-1 standard quite easily.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
can I ask a question? This is Holly. On the map, you mentioned that in Mount Marion Park, each dot is a house.
Yes, or a structure. It could be a garage
Yeah.
or barn or something like that.
Are all the other, like as I'm looking through this red area, Rolson Drive, where there's a few dots there, right? So
Yes.
those are structures that won't be getting better
Correct.
coverage.
Correct.
But as I look in the area of the map where the red is to the right of that, the red that's sort of straight up behind Mount Marion School, there are
Yes.
no dots. Does that mean there's no structures there?
Correct.
Or, okay, it does.
Yep.
Okay.
So, we didn't circle that because, while that could still be an important area, if a hunter, had a heart attack hiking up the side of the hill and need to call 911, that's clearly an area that's still important. So we're not discounting the importance of that, but because it doesn't include those residential areas, we haven't called that out. So that's the difference between those two, why one's circled and one's not.
Okay, thanks.
Mike, I had a question. You said that along, along the thruway area and everything, that there were difficulties at this site, on the industrial road site, that were not there for the Mount Marion Firehouse site. What kind of impediments were there along the thruway and along Churchland Road there? I mean, that is just wide open land, and there's a lot of land on the side of the thruway on the Churchland side, so I'm not sure what's holding us back from getting complete coverage along there.
Well, when we get into the next slide, you'll see as we start
Okay.
talking about the different heights, and we'll be able to see the impact of lowering the height and what that does for the site's ability to cover the entire intended service area. So
Okay, can you just tell me before you move, where's Churchland Road on this map?
So Churchland Road is this road right here.
I don't see where you're pointing.
So Churchland Road is the road that runs parallel to 87, correct?
Yeah, it's right on the other side of
So-
87.
Yep. So you see this, it's a red and white dash road. That's that road there. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but I'm moving it
I
along.
can't see it for some reason.
I thought Churchland Road was on the other side of 87. Am I just
It is on
wrong?
the other side. It's on the other side from the tower.
Is it
So
the
Correct.
one-
So your
it's on
cursor
the-
is on Kings Highway now.
Oh, Kings Highway. Yeah, sorry about that.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so
we're
that's Kings
looking
Highway.
on the
So
other
Churchland Road
side.
is this side
It's-
here.
You got to cross
Yep.
the bridge and go to Churchland Road.
Yep.
That's
He's got his cursor on it now.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
This is Ron. Can you hear me?
yeah,
It's Ron. Can you hear me?
yes.
yes.
Good. Okay. I just wanted to point out something. This is it's very interesting and helpful. But if you look at the presentation, on the right-hand side, there's a gray bar. And if you drag that, you can move up and down on the map. And if you grab the bar at the bottom, you can move left and right on the maps. And then over on the left-hand side, you can zoom in even more. So when you're looking for a specific road, you just grab on that bar at the bottom and you could slide the green thing over or then zoom back out. I mean, that was something Mike did here that was quite helpful, that you can now actually pick the areas you want to see in this and then zoom in if you had any questions. Like if you zoom in on the distance between the fire department and Industrial Rive and just zoom in on that, you can see about just how far apart they are by sliding over the bar and looking at. And you see it's someone said a quarter of a mile or less.
Ron,
So that,
how are you doing that? I don't think we have copies of this yet.
Oh, we don't. Well, look at your map, and then where it gets black on the right-hand side. See where it gets black?
Hmm.
There's a little gray bar there.
Well,
Press
not
on
okay.
that and move it up and down, and you'll move the map.
Okay, but we don't have this map yet.
Oh, no, we have this. No. I'm looking. I never got this stuff. I'm looking at what he has online right now.
Okay.
Give it a
It
try.
might be like
I
I see
agree.
it in the bottom left underneath where it says Verizon. There's some menu buttons that are sort of ghosted in color. You might be able to see them
Yeah, I
there.
think what Ron's saying is if you move your mouse, you kind of come up with this little gray bar on the side.
Right.
And you can zoom in. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know.
Oh,
Way
So
over
when
on the left-hand side, you will see a plus and a
yeah.
minus. So
Okay.
you
Okay.
can zoom all the way out so you can see the entire page in one, like he has 8.5 by 11. You can see the whole thing. But if you go to that little plus button, I can zoom in just to the green area and forget about, but if you stay with the white area, then you can see, you said, what are those little dots over there? Those are homes. And then look in the green area and zoom in some more, and you can
Thank you.
really see what's there. I mean,
I
it's
see it.
Mike, it's one of the best presentations you've made as far as that concerned. It really helps people.
Good, I'm
Thanks for
Especially
glad to hear
pointing
that.
that out, Ron, because we didn't know we could do that.
Mm.
We had no clue.
I hope it helped.
It
It
does.
did. I didn't see that either, Holly. I was with you. I'm like, I don't see this gray bar.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not getting it.
yeah.
Thank
Hey,
you,
that's why I
Ron.
get the big bucks, okay? Come on. I'll mute
So-
myself. I'm done.
So that's so that basically just gives you the base layer from the conversation, the discussion. You know, we were very insistent that the fire department, you know, taking down the existing tower, replacing it with a new tower was the right thing to do. And when we were asked repeatedly to move into the industrial zone, you know, we had to make this comparison, and we had originally said that an apples to apples comparison at the same height didn't work. That remains true. But this gives you the ability to see what it looks like if we were to go to the next step, which is to try to find out, you know, what would it take in the industrial zone at this exact location, you know, what height is necessary, and that's how we came to 146. And so Ron had asked us, you know, when we had looked at the fire department, Ron had said that the height of 120 feet was very modest, and that it was just above the tree line, and there was no height justification required for that, and it was a very reasonable and very modest height for that location. This location is further away, quarter of a mile away. It doesn't have that same line of sight characteristic that we talked about earlier because of the terrain moving to the west. And so when you look at the lower heights, so now this is comparing, the red is 146 on the left side screen, and the green is 136. And on the right side screen, the red is still 146 and the green is 126. And so what we're looking at here is we're looking at the footprint of the site. This is what's called the best server footprint. This tells us exactly where the site at the proposed height is going to be helping to offload the existing overloaded sites, which we've talked about in the past, are the Kingston Alpha and Saugerties, I think it was the beta sector. So the ability to offload those sites is directly related to where the new site will provide the service footprint. And so when you look at this, you can see obviously in what's expected is that as we reduce the height, the gaps are going to increase in size and scale. And so each one of these purple circles represents areas where the coverage has degraded. So you see there's a very small stretch of 87, you know, but obviously there's some larger stretches of Route 32. And then as you go down to 126 on the right side screen, you see there's an even bigger delta. And so, you know, this is something that, you know, you can look at these slides. I'm going back to the slide before. You can see the 146. It's roughly serving the entire intended area that the site was intended to serve. And as you start to reduce the height as expected, you start to see that those gaps will start to open up. And again, this is best server. This isn't the whole story. And that's what I talk about in the earlier slide where there's a lot of dialogue. In order for us to properly evaluate this area, it can't just be where do we have street level service, where are we displacing the existing sites. It's about where are we able to provide the correct signal level. So customers oftentimes correlate signal level to the bars of service on your phone. As we all know, if you have one bar on your phone, while that may work outside, that's not going to work inside your house. And so that's why the next slide is necessary, which we jump
Mike,
into. And this is
before you move on to that next, before you go on, I just wanted to clarify, because now here, the red is the different, and the red versus green is the different heights, right? We're not looking at the fire department red.
fire department is
versus-
not part of these plots, correct? This is just
Okay, 'cause
straight up
the
looking at 146 versus the two lower levels.
No, it
So-
says, the
yeah,
key
the
says
legend-
fire department.
The legend still says red is fire
Oh,
department.
you're right. That
but
was a
you're-
mistake. That's a mistake on my part. I should have caught that. I'm surprised that I missed that one. I must have got excited trying to get this done. No, you're right. That's incorrect. But the other legend, which we have that's up here in the text, is correct, where it says 17 industrial, 146 is red, 17 industrial, 136 is green. That's correct on both screens, but you're right. I forgot to go back and fix that other legend that I copied and pasted, so I can
So
correct
before
that.
you submit it to the board, would you be able to take out that legend just so it's not
100%.
confusing? Perfect, thank
Yep,
you.
we'll be able to fix that. Thank you for catching that. That's very good catch.
Do you want the legend out or do you want it corrected?
Correct.
Corrected.
Correct it.
Correct it, because everything else is fine, and it's just because it has two different red, you know, it says red is the 17 industrial 146. We just don't want it to say fire department, but the other stuff
Yep.
is fine.
Actually,
Absolutely.
also that legend has the incorrect, you know, that legend is kind of misleading because it's only on the left side of the page. So it can only reflect, like right now it says 17 industrial, green is 146, but on the right side, it'll be that, but then the red will be different things on the split of the screen. So I don't know how you account for that.
So we'll put it in on each side of the screen to make sure that that's addressed. Yeah, I think if
Okay.
I had caught that, so
Yep.
I put the legend in here 3 times on the screen. So inherently, obviously, I'm going to miss one of them. So
Mhm.
it's a good catch, and we can certainly correct that. So I appreciate the feedback on that. So
So
moving
Mike,
on.
the stuff that's in red, the stuff that's in red that says 17 Industrial Drive, 146 ACL, that is additional we're getting, plus the green at that height as opposed to 126.
Correct. So if you're looking at the 146 covers everything that's in red and green, whereas
Okay,
the lower height at 136 is only the green. So anywhere you see red, those are areas that we lose by lowering the height.
okay, and so the white areas are areas that are not covered.
The white areas are areas that are not covered by this site, because remember, this is a best server plot. So we have all the sites on that are generating coverage. So this is the areas that are either served by other sites or are coverage gaps. It's only
Okay.
the best server, which is the site in question.
Okay,
That's the only colors that are on in the screen. In reality, there's other sites that are, all the other sites in the network are on, but they're not showing coverage because we're just focusing on just the delta
Okay.
between the two. When we show the other sites, it gets far too complex.
okay,
So this slide here was what I was getting into about the different bars of service on your phone and the ability to be able to use the site in building versus street level. And so these are the standard colors that we use throughout the RF justification. These are what we call our signal strength threshold plots. These again, here on the top left, you can see that we have just the base map, which shows you the topographical layer. It's zoomed in even further than we had on the previous map, so you can get even better clarity. And then if you look at the top right, that's 146, bottom left is 136, and bottom right is 126. So when you're looking at these, the key points here was the details that were asked about the Mount Marion Park Residential, which again is in that blue square, as well as the elementary school, which is the red star. And then for orientation purpose, relative to the other slides, we've looked at the red circle is the original search ring, with this black symbol being the fire department and this black symbol being the 17 industrial.
So
when
what's
you look
yellow?
So yellow, if you read the legend down here at the bottom, that's neg 95 dBm RSRP versus the green is neg 85. So green is stronger signal, yellow is weaker signal, and then orange is the weakest signal. So when we're talking about the different heights and we're looking at trying to provide the in-building service, that green signal strength that covers the majority of the Mount Marion Park area is really what we're trying to get in order to provide adequate and reliable in-building service.
Mm.
We take the signal strength of neg 85, for example, and you go inside of a building, that can provide you with anywhere from 15 to 25 dB of loss. What that means is the signal strength outside is not the same as the signal strength inside. A car is anywhere from 8 to 12 dB, and a house is 12 dB and above. So it could be very easily could be 20 dB. So if you look at the usable signal at 85, that gets you down to neg 105, which is the minimum signal you need outside. You then have that minimum signal inside, and that's why we say the green is really what we're targeting. Now, does that mean that if you're near a window or on a second floor, or your house is facing the site just in the right way, that you get a little bit better coverage than your neighbor, or maybe you don't have trees in your yard and your neighbor does? There's a lot of things that go into impacting whether a site serves inside a building or not. It's not just as simple as these slides that we're showing, but the idea here is to try to understand what the impact of lowering the center line is. And in this case, you can see we have the best likelihood of being able to serve that community at 146 feet, which is one of the reasons why we selected that height. At 136, you see it's primarily in the yellow. Again, there's still going to be portions of this community that are going to be able to have, in-building service and adequate in-building service, but it's going to be reduced. And as you get down to this 126 level, the likelihood that there's going to be in-building penetration issues is very high. So
Even
makes it
even with this, you get the Mount Marion School is still yellow, even at 146.
at 146, we're right on the edge between the yellow and the green. We looked at that in close detail. So you're right in that area, and then you're down into the yellow by the time you get to 136, and you can see you're in the orange by the time you get to 126. So we would not expect there to be any in-building coverage for AWS at that level. And remember too, with schools, those are more substantial structures, typically brick or concrete. A lot of times, steel roofs or, big wood truss roofs, so those are more substantial in nature. They're more difficult to serve inside of. And they're larger, square footage wise as well. So you have more walls inside the building for once you do come through one wall at the signal, there's more walls to penetrate to cover the entire school. So that is the last slide, I believe. Yes, that's the last slide. And so I know that there was some confusion about what was submitted. This was what was intended to be submitted. I hope that everybody has a chance to take a look at this and read through it. I think it addresses the majority of the concerns that the board, as well as Ron, had brought up. I hope, that you look on this favorably, and I hope it helps to try to understand in more clarity how the height impacts the area. Are there any other questions?
No questions from the board? All right, I have, you could take this down if you want, Mike.
Okay.
Oh, Dan, did you want to see, Dan, we want to go to the balloon test now. Okay. We want to go to the, who's going to be showing us those?
Well, Patty, just because of the RF, does Ron have any? Because I know Ron had talked about getting the RF.
Ron?
So this was kind of,
Yeah.
I just want to know
Okay.
if this answers Ron's questions.
I see Ron waving now, so go for it, Ron. You're muted. Kevin, can you unmute him?
No, I'm afraid I cannot. I can
Ron,
request
you
it.
need to unmute.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear
Good.
me now?
Yes.
I sound like
Yes.
I sound like a Verizon commercial. This was quite helpful. Was beginning of what I expected that Mike would do. This is my first time seeing these because of this this issue. But one of the issues that I still need to see, and I think the board needs to see. Mike's done a wonderful job of showing this the dearth of coverage at the lower heights, 136. Yeah, okay. But the question in my mind, the firehouse at 100 and what was it? 114 feet? Was that the or 116? Right? There's a
Right.
120-foot tower minus 4, 116 feet. That had a certain coverage that Verizon was happy with. And my concern is that what height at the new location is equivalent to what comes from the firehouse at 116 feet center of radiation. That is this thing about, well, there's some orange there. Listen, I saw a lot of orange and I saw a lot of green and some white. Fine. But the question is that what is the equivalency of this new location versus the old location? And I think that's the selling feature here for the board, because you obviously, or you think that this location is good, or this is the location that meets your requirements. That's beyond my pay grade. But the question now is, how high is the pole at this particular location? What's the minimum height necessary? And being that they were happy with the firehouse at 116 feet AGL for the center radiation, how does that compare to what comes from the other side? And it still is a little troublesome to me. And however you figure this, a quarter of a mile, third of a mile, eighth of a mile, and a 4-foot ground elevation difference between the two sites. One site is the firehouse is 4 feet or 5 feet higher in ground elevation, and the terrain between them is insignificantly different unless someone does terrain profiles. What is the calculated performance of the proposed site, the original proposed site, versus the selected site now at the different elevations? And that clearly will cement in your mind, in the board's mind, what is the minimum height needed at this preferred location, if it is a preferred location, and I'm not finding on that. That's what I'm still waiting to see, and I thought we were going to get that, and maybe we will. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's go on to the balloon test results. Unless people don't feel they need to see them because they've seen them, but did anybody else have difficulty trying to maneuver the views on the balloon test on the internet portion of it, the digital?
The problem with that, among other things, is the maps, the base maps that are used to demonstrate a number of things on those maps are not nearly as good or as clear as the ones that Mike just showed with the coverage requirements. There's no street names, there's no topography. It's virtually impossible to understand where you are on those maps. So to improve those base maps would make it easier to understand. On the other hand, they did, as I had requested, that they prepare a view shed map, which takes into account existing topography to determine those areas from which the tower cannot be seen because there's a mountain in the front of it. The various viewpoints should be displayed on that map, and it'll demonstrate that some of them aren't worth doing because they're in areas where you'll never see the tower no matter what. I think the clarity of the maps is important. And then I think it's someplace in the report, there should be a summary of the conclusions that indicates from where the tower is visible, what the sensitivity of the viewpoint is, whether it's a historic house or just a residence which has no cultural significance, so that when considering the impact, some viewpoints have more significance in terms of the impact of the visibility on them, and it should be all summarized in the report which accompanies these maps.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. I think a summary would be helpful. And Patty, did you say that one of them, in addition to the ones where they weren't done, did you say one had the wrong direction?
Yeah, there were a couple of the photos that you took. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There were a couple of the photos that you took that were your photographer took. For example, he took a picture of the Cahill School. The Cahill School was not on the list. It was the Kiersted House that is a historic place that was on the list. And I had indicated that last time whoever took the picture took it in the wrong direction. They faced north, which is not anywhere near where the firehouse tower was going to be looking. So I indicated on the list this time to make sure they're facing south. But they didn't take a picture of the Kiersted House. They took a picture of the Cahill School for I don't know what reason. They also took a picture that identified itself as Howard Johnson's on Kings Highway. There is no Howard Johnson's on Kings Highway. It's on Route 32 over by the Thruway, and I had removed that from the list because I knew it was never going to be seen, but there it was. So there were just those kind of things where the directions were wrong or photos that were in there that I had said, you're not going to see these. And I went around on that day and to check to see where I could see the balloons and where I couldn't. And so that was just, frustrating that we specifically mentioned last time about the Cahill School and the Kiersted House being mixed up. And it again happened this time. But you're not going to see it from the Kiersted House, so it ends up not mattering. But it was just, that kind of inaccuracy that kind of colored it. It made me really very careful at looking at all the sites. And I'm going to go revisit some of those sites there to make sure they're looking at it from the right direction, because I'm not sure. It doesn't look right to me. So that's all I'm saying is when these next photographs are taken, they should just be more careful in terms of making sure that they're looking in the right direction of where the tower is. And getting in the best position from that property. You know, if moving over a couple of yards is going to give them a better photograph and the house isn't going to be right in your face, then that's probably what they should do. But
And Patty, can I just jump in on there, on that issue?
Yep.
I generally do not go around with them. I did not this time.
oh, I know, I know you don't, because I saw them the last time when they were out doing photographs.
So, okay, and I can't tell you what they did here. I know I was out with them on a different site within the last, maybe it was August. And I'm only gonna say, I was literally out there. So when they're out there, at least the people that I was working with, they are looking very hard to find the balloon. I remember at one location, we sat there for about 10 minutes and saying, where is that? We know it was in between trees. So the
Right.
point is that they do try to, like in your case, if they're on a property and they have to move over a couple of yards, they do
Right.
look for it in that regard.
No, and I'm sure they do, but when you're looking north and the balloon is south, that's not going to help much. You know what I mean?
That I can't,
So-
but that I'll have to ask them about.
Okay. So, do you want to show these balloon views? Is that what you're planning to do now?
If
Or
you
you
would
gotta
like to
wait
see
until-
them,
Or unless you want to show them all together next time with the complete set? What does the board
it's
want
your
to see?
preference, exactly.
Board members?
I think we show everything the next time when everything's in order.
When
Patty.
it's completed,
Mhm.
when it's completed.
Yeah, I'd rather see all of it together. Make more sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott, when are we gonna get those?
They will be out in the field on Thursday. That's the next good weather day. And I don't have a date, but I'm pushing for next week. Because
Okay.
we need to get those to you as soon as
They
possible.
have, I'll tell you when they have to be received. They have to be at the ZBA by May 26th.
Yeah, that will not be a problem. My goal is to get them to you much earlier.
Well, that would be good because we want to get them to the board as well. And it would also be helpful if when you send a packet to the board, you're not only sending electronically because we can then send it off to the public that way. But it would be really good if the board had hard copies of all of the maps that we're going to be getting electronically and the balloon test as well. It just would be helpful to see it.
That's exactly what I did the last time. I sent them, you have hard copies at the town offices of
Yeah.
everything I submitted.
Yes,
They would have
yes,
been, I always
Yes,
send them hard
but-
copies and
but
electronic.
Scott,
yes.
You sent them at the last minute, so there wasn't time to get them all to us, so we had to all go pick them up if we wanted. So
Oh, I
anything you
apologize
can
for-
do to get them sooner would be
I-
appreciated.
I apologize. We got them. Some of the stuff I didn't get until
Mhm.
literally, I had 20 minutes to get out. That's why, and it was still within a deadline, but my goal
Yes.
here is to get these out to you by next week.
Patty,
Thank you.
it's Kevin. Do you want to request any hard copy for Dan or John Lyons
Yes,
or
I
anybody
think
else?
I think certainly hard copies besides the electronic files, hard copies should be sent to Ron Grafe as well of the maps for sure. Ron, you want hard copies, don't you? Ron?
He's
I can't,
muted.
he's muted.
I will send him the.
Can you hear me now? I'd like them in a timely fashion too, please.
Yes, but you want hard copies of everything, right?
Yeah, it makes it easier, although
Yes,
tonight I just have
yes.
to say that the presentation that was movable and zoomable was helpful.
Okay,
We
and-
have full 8.5 by 11 presentations of everything. Don't put it in a little corner, make it large, and it gives everyone a chance to try to pick out where the houses or whatever they're looking for may be.
So, and Ron, I will do the best I can. I know that some of the quality that comes off of our printer, I don't know. So maybe I'll have to see about outsourcing it because I want to give something that's as legible as possible. And I don't know if, even though we have some large color printers, I tried to up the resolution, the DPI, but I'm not a graphics person. So I guess I'll have to try to work it out and I'll talk to you about the best way to present it to you.
Okay,
So-
I actually thought
so-
that Mike's stuff was quite good, and
Okay.
it was easy to see once you blew it up, wasn't it? I mean, I thought the board had an opportunity to try to pick out individual areas. That was a surprise that it worked that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't know whose printer that was, but obviously it was pretty good. Whatever you want to do, because the purpose is so everyone can see exactly. And you know, if there's a question about what road is that? Is that Route 23? And someone didn't know. The best way is to make sure that the scale is large or large enough or small enough, as the case may be, so that you can see that minute detail.
So Patty, how many are we requesting Scott to send to me?
Well, we want to the board and to you, and we want Ron to be getting them, so that's that. And then Kim, do you want one for your office?
Yeah, that
Hard
would be
copy?
helpful. Yeah, in fact, I was just gonna say too, Scott, when you sometimes if you have like a large scale map, like the site plan map, if you can kind of get like an electronic version that's to scale as opposed to just on an 8.5 by 11. If you even in the electronic copy, if you could somehow incorporate that way, in case anybody does want to print a large scale, they can do that like at their local printers. But in terms of hard copies, just one set for John and myself would be appreciated.
And
No problem.
I would appreciate a copy, hard copies of the visuals, the photos and the maps that go with the visuals.
Okay.
Same here with me, George Ryder.
and George. So what is that, Kevin, how many is that?
Well,
9, 10?
that's 10 to us, and if they're sending directly to Ron, so 10 to us, that's this, well, we have 5 board members, I guess, technically now.
5?
So 5, and then 6 to me, and then George, Dan, and Kim's office makes 9.
Okay.
And then Scott, will you be sending directly to Ron, or will you be sending to me to send to Ron?
No, I'll send it directly to Ron. And
Okay.
that same address I sent the last one to, Ron, in Florida. Okay.
Okay, so you can send the 9.
Still here.
To
I'm
me.
still here till the end of May, and then I'm coming back to the greater Northeast, Joe.
Okay. So I'll send 9 to the board, and then 1 to Ron and Kim and John, and then
Right.
Dan and George get the visuals.
And also send send Kevin electronic files of everything too, so that way we can send them out for people who file FOIL requests. We could just send them the electronic files.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
also to be posted on the website, yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Okay, so now
can you also send us the that's what we would like, the visuals, like from the balloon test too. Sorry.
Do you want the others? I mean, I can send you everything.
Yeah, that's just, we like the balloon test and the
Okay.
site plan map things.
Okay. You got it.
Okay, is George still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I want to just ask
I'm
George and
here.
Tim to kind of advise as to what they think we should do about the public hearing. Should we wait until we see the new documentation from the balloon test before we proceed, or we could use your suggestions, your advice?
Yeah, I think,
My-
oh, go ahead, George, if you want to.
No, my suggestion is definitely one of the main purposes of establishing the hearing on the issues before the board is getting the full information so that the public can have input. And that was something I think is highly important. And then I'll let my colleague Kim finish up.
I completely agree. We want to make sure that when the public's commenting, they're commenting on the most thorough and complete application, and the visual and the balloon test is going to be a very important aspect of that, especially for some of the houses that are adjacent to it, and some of the potential historic structures. So I do think that by holding off on the public hearing, it does just allow for a more efficient process, so that everyone's looking at the most complete application.
May I just interrupt? I apologize. Notwithstanding the frustration that you may have experienced, I would, and I don't disagree. I think that all the information should be in advance of the public hearing. What I would suggest that if you would be willing to consider we're going to get this information to you next week. And the public hearing notice deadline is subsequent to that. So would the board be comfortable scheduling a public hearing contingent upon receipt of that information? If we don't provide the information, there's no hearing. And I know the board is working to move this along. So I'm just throwing that out there as an option.
What say you, board? Holly, what do you think?
Unmute. I think that's okay, as long as we get everything next week, like Scott says.
Okay, Tim?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that at this point.
Joe?
As well.
Okay, Henry?
I'll agree to it, but they don't have too great of a track record. That's
I
all.
understand. I'll agree to that too, but we're talking a week, Scott, because we want to get this out and I want to put the notice in. I don't want to have to put in a reverse notice. You know, I want to make sure that the notice goes in. You're going to send out the things to the public hearing too. So,
That's my point, Patty.
so next week, so today's Monday. So by Tuesday of next week, we should have these.
You know, I'm going to do everything I can to do that. Like I said, I'm trying to get it done as fast as possible. I've got to talk to Steve Matthews on that. The goal is to get out in the field Thursday. The weather looks very good. If the weather gets blown out from now until then, I'll tell you right now, then we can't.
Well, it's
finish
going to
it.
rain for the next couple of days.
And Thursday's Thursday's supposed to be mid-50s and I think mostly sunny.
When
So
is the when does the notice have to be published?
It has to be within 10 to 14 days of 7 to 14 days before the meeting. So because we do it into the
So I'm just looking at
Right.
the calendar. I think we should be clear about those dates and clear about when we need everything if we're going to put that notice in.
the meeting would be on June 7th.
Right.
So we should have it in the papers, not the weekend before the meeting, because that doesn't give people enough notice. It has to be in the paper where people can read it by the 20th of May. That's the date they publish. So it has to be into the paper by that Monday to be published on the 20th, so that people will have that whole weekend to read the paper and see
Okay.
the notice. So,
I would just say to the board, I understand, we want to keep keep everything moving, and, the balloon test will be a pivotal point for the public hearing. But if you don't think that the balloon test, I know there's concern about leaf on versus leaf off. And if you have any concerns or reservations, and if you think that we do need to wait for the June 7th meeting to go over them, we need to, at the ZBA, you just need to make sure that the public has the information that they need for the public hearing. So I just want to just make the board know that, we're trying to move forward, and it would be good for the public hearing, for the public to start commenting. But if you don't think that the balloon test is sufficient and that they need to do something, the board should know that they have that option.
right.
Right. I don't want to get the information from Scott like next Friday and then find out it's not good enough and then end up having to continue the public hearing for another meeting because the information wasn't enough. Like, I just don't want to be inefficient.
Scott, if you don't have this information by the 11th, or it doesn't look like you're going to get it by the 11th or the 12th, just please let us know. And, we'll just put you on the agenda for the next meeting, but we will not be doing a public hearing. We're going to need that info. Plus, we're also going to need your revised variance request.
Absolutely.
Because we aren't going to be able to send anything to the county for this review if we don't have a decent balloon test. I mean, we got to have everything together before we can even proceed. So, it's up to you actually to make sure that balloon test is going to be worth it. Make sure it's done and we're able to see what we would see if it was done a month and a half ago. As best as possible.
As best as we can do. as best as
All
we
right.
can do. I mean, the only thing I could say is, for an example, I mean, I don't think all the leaves are out, but even if we submitted an application today, I don't think, and again, I appreciate everything, but we wouldn't be waiting for a balloon test to be done in November, because that just wouldn't meet the requirements. So we're gonna do it as fast as we can. And
Okay.
that's all we can do at this point.
And if you don't have that list, if you need me to send that list again that I did in red, you have it?
We have it. We do have it.
Okay. All right, so would somebody like to make a motion to do a public hearing for June 7th? With the caveat that it depends on us receiving all of the remaining information, the balloon test and the revised variance request by the 11th. Somebody make that motion?
What's the 11th? I forgot. Is that next
It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Week from tomorrow.
Can I have a second? Joe made that
Is it
motion. Can I
12?
have a second?
Can we do it the
I
12th?
second it, Patty.
Henry
I'll second it.
seconds. Okay, Holly,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. This meeting is over except for the ZBA, which has some business to attend to. And we'll see you all, hopefully. Bye, Ron. Bye, thanks. Kim, thank you. George, thanks. Dan, thanks. Scott, Brett, Mike. We'll see you all on the 7th, and Scott, we'll talk before then, or we'll communicate.
Yes, we will.
Have a
Thank you.
great evening.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
thanks.
Right.
Okay. The only other business we have is to approve the April 3rd minutes. I know Kevin put the March minutes in there, but we did that at the last meeting. So the only minutes we have to approve are the April 3rd minutes. And would anybody like to make that motion?
Motion to approve April 3rd minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Sure. Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, is there anything else, dear board members, that we need? Oh, the only other thing I want to tell you is I'm going to go pick up the card that's been down at the, in the clerk's office for the past week. If you haven't signed the
Mhm.
card yet, you can still do it before tomorrow at 3. And if not, I will sign your names.
I was gonna say, you're gonna take care of it for us, right, Patty?
What?
Joe contacted you, you're gonna take care of it for Joe and I, signing the card?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Patty.
And,
thank you. Patty, did we need to make Holly, do we need to make her kind of like any designation to move her out of alternate status, at
no,
least temporarily?
we had a quorum without Holly tonight, so we didn't.
Got it.
Oh, right. You did not designate me tonight.
No,
Okay.
because we had a quorum, so we just left
Right.
it as it was. I'm sorry, Holly.
I'm sorry I did so much talking then.
No, I'm glad you did. It was
Talk
great.
more.
It was great.
Talk more, Holly.
Talk all you want. Anything
Talk well.
else? I think I sent you an email, all of you, about the secret, and we'll know more about that, but with working with the planning board. And that's it. That's all I have to report. Let's just pray that we get those photos and we'll move on. Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Again, they
Thanks,
We have a
everybody.
motion to close?
What?
They have a poor track
Motion to
record.
Okay.
We do.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.
Night.
See ya.
Kevin,
Night, all.
thank you.
No
Good night,
problem.
all.
See you soon.
Okay.